Hey everybody, welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. I'm your host, Alec Etheridge, managing editor here at the Shelby County Reporter, and we are right here at Pelham High School, which is going to host our game of the week this Friday night. The Panthers going to play host to the Calera Eagles in a big county battle to kick off region play between these two teams. Both teams going to enter this matchup 1-1 through their first two games. We've seen some promising things from both teams, and then last week a little bit of a drop back and a disappointment as both picked up a loss in their second game of the season. So plenty to talk about here between these two teams, but it's the beginning of region play. This is where the new season really begins. We've got a lot of big matchups to kick off region play this Friday night as teams really start to leave their mark and chase down a spot in the playoffs for the 2021 season. We're going to get you geared up for all of the games taking place this Friday night, and through 2 weeks of the season, we've seen some great play so far. We still have 6 teams undefeated right now on the season, sitting at 2-0 through their first 2 games. We're going to talk about each of those teams and what you can expect this Friday night as each looks to move to 3-0 and some great opportunities to do so. I think we'll have several teams sitting in that position still undefeated at the end of this Friday night. And don't forget, at the end of this week's show, we're going to name our SCR Stars of the Week. Several big performances again last week. Another performance by Joseph Anderson that you will have to hear about to believe, as he put together a strong showing to help the Bulldogs pick up a win against Shelby County in a rivalry matchup there. But we've got some games to talk about. It's the first week of region play. We've got 2 weeks behind us, and now the new season really begins as these teams get ready to chase down a playoff spot. We're going to talk about all the matchups, and we're going to start right here at Pelham High School. So as the Panthers have just cleared the field of their Monday morning early practice here at Pelham High School, it's time to get you set for what's going to be an exciting week of high school football, including this game right here between the Panthers and the Calera Eagles. And this one's really taken a turn to be extremely important for both of these teams and for a couple of reasons. But you got to start with the way that both of these teams began the season. Big wins in the opening week to start 1-0. The Pelham Panthers 42-6 against Mortimer Jordan. They did just about everything right on both sides of the ball, including the offensive side, jumping out to a 35-0 halftime lead before winning that one 42-6. Obviously, the defense played well in that game, and that was a big key in helping them pick up such an easy victory to start the season. You look at Calera, on the other hand, a 26-22 win against Demopolis in their opener, the first time they've beaten Demopolis in school history. A big win for the Calera Eagles under first-year head coach Jason Hamlin. That's the kind of win that gives you some confidence moving forward. But then you go into week 2 and both have a slight setback. You look at what Calera did last week, taking on Jackson Olin, a team we knew was going to be physical and athletic, and a tough matchup for Calera from a depth and stamina standpoint. And Jackson Olin came out and won that game 38-13. And you've got the Eagles sitting at 1-1. Then you've got the Pelham Panthers. They take on 7A Oak Mountain. I picked the Panthers to win that game, and I've been high on them all off season. I still think they have a ton of talent, but they've got to figure out some more things on the offensive side of the football. You look at what they did last week, a 21-0 loss to Oak Mountain. That defense continued to play well. They held Oak Mountain to a shutout in the first half. That's a 7A school that's really got a lot of swagger about them right now, coming off a big win against Chelsea in week 1, and they played well defensively there really throughout the game. Early in that game against Oak Mountain, though, they couldn't punch in opportunities on the offensive side of the football. They had it into Oak Mountain territory a few times in the first half, but walked away empty-handed. They could have had a 14-0, possibly even a 20-21 lead going into the half of that game, simply by the way that they played defensively and the opportunities that they missed on the offensive side. And that could have made a world of difference in a game that they ended up losing 21-0 because they gave up 21 unanswered in the second half. A large reason for that was because the defense was on the field so much, with the offense not able to capitalize on a lot of those opportunities. And look, this is a Pelham offense that has a ton of talent sitting at really every position. It's one of the best offenses from a standpoint of what you've got across the field. And you look at quarterback Will Langford, you look at running back Gabe Gamble, you look at guys like Darius Copeland, and that was a big loss for them last week. He went down early in that game with an injury, looked to be dehydrated, suffering from some cramping, and had to be carted off the sideline late in that game. So we'll see if he's ready to go this Friday. He's a key piece both in the return game at running back and receiver, is one of the best athletes on the offensive side of the ball. So getting him back adds a different level and a different dimension to this offense. But you've got several receivers, you've got a strong offensive line, so now it's just about capitalizing and finishing some of those drives. If Pelham can do that, then they're going to be just fine the rest of the season, still have a very good opportunity to repeat as region champions this year. But you've got to fine-tune that offense, start capitalizing and finishing those drives when you get those good opportunities. From a defensive standpoint, it's simply just keep doing what you've been doing so far this season. You look at what the defense has been able to do so far. Obviously gave up just 6 points against Mortimer Jordan in the opener, and then last week shut out at the half against Oak Mountain. They came out, they really played decent in the second half too, but eventually it's just going to wear on you when you're out on the field that much, and that's what happened. So if the offense can sustain some drives and capitalize this week, that would be their biggest key going into this game against Calera. Now, you've got a Calera team that in week one showed they could make the late plays to win, beating Demopolis 26-22. That was a back-and-forth game, and they made that last big play that they needed to on the offensive side of the ball, scoring a late touchdown, but then also making some big plays defensively late in that game. Last week, taking on a Jackson Olin team where they competed early in that ball game, but then it just got to a point where that's similar to Pelham, the stamina and the depth. You've just got to be able to get over that hump there in the second half of those games, and they did it in week one. Last week weren't quite able to come back as they fell behind by a little bit more there against Jackson Olin. So which team's going to handle that better in the second half this week is going to be key, and this is an important one. You've got two teams sitting at 1-1 right now on the season, and both hoping for different outcomes moving forward. You don't want to lose two in a row and start out 0-1 in region play, because then it's an uphill battle and you've lost a lot of that early season momentum that you had following week one. So a big week for both of these teams. Pelham looking to repeat as region champions. Calera looking to get back into the playoffs for the first time in a while. They feel like they've got a good chance, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these two battle for this first region win of the 2021 season. You look at Calera, I don't know that they have it across the board. They have so much talent and so much athleticism, but it's just not as widespread as what you've got at Pelham. You look at Calera's offense, you've got a guy like Chris Cotton, you've got Kobe Prentice, one of the best receivers in the country, and you've got a young quarterback in Preston Stokes who's starting to step up and prove that he can handle the pressure of the starting position there for the Eagles. But at the same time, there's just not as much widespread talent across the board that's proven itself to this point, at least. They are very athletic. Now it's just about having some more guys step up. And you look defensively, they've played decent so far this season. Wesley Head's been big on the defensive side of the football, but again, it's about more guys stepping up. For Pelham, they've got it. It's just about them playing to the level that they can play to. If they do that, they should have the upper hand in this one, but don't be surprised if this game's a tight one. Last year, 49-41 Pelham win, and Pelham was the better team a year ago overall as well. Calera pushed them down to the final minutes, and they'll do the same thing again this year. It's not going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination, and expect both these teams looking to come back and fight in this one coming off that loss last week. I expect this one to go down to the wire. Now we'll do what we do every week, and we'll go classification by classification, talk about all the big region matchups coming up this Friday night to kick off region play. And we're going to start in the 7A classification with who else but the Thompson Warriors, the number one team in Class 7A, inching up in the national rankings now into the top 3 in some polls, and rightfully so. This is a Thompson team that started with back-to-back shutouts, 2 straight shutouts for the first time since 1976. More than 40 years since they've done that, so an impressive feat so far for the Warriors, with 55-0 wins against both Oxford and this past Friday night, and a big one as well, as they look to continue gaining some momentum moving forward with that win against Sparkman last Friday. So now they get a Tuscaloosa County team that is also struggling early in the season. They did win their opener, but last week lose 35-10 to 6A Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. And you look at what Thompson's doing this year so far. This is a team that's improved from what we saw in last year's state championship team, the two-time defending state champion. Early in the season, they look better on both sides of the football, which is a scary thought. But you look at what this defense has done, and last year in this game, they were able to put together a dominant performance, winning 49-7 against Tuscaloosa County. It wouldn't shock me at all if you're looking at the end of Friday night, a Thompson team that has 3 consecutive shutouts to kick off the 2021 season, and they don't need to shut out this Tuscaloosa County team. They want to shut out this Tuscaloosa County team. But you look at what the offense has, they can compete, they can pull away on their own. Connor Harrell, 6 touchdown passes last week, more than 200 yards passing. He's off to a strong start so far this season. Justin Pegues has stepped in as an all-around athlete for the Warriors in the return game and at receiver. He can play some running back as well, but last week, more than 130 yards receiving with a couple of touchdowns there to lead the Warriors at that position. So Thompson loaded. Those are just 2 guys of many on the offensive side of the ball, and we all know what they have defensively with Peter Woods, Jeremiah Alexander, Jax Van Zant, Tony Mitchell. The list goes on. This is a Thompson team that's loaded, taking on a Tuscaloosa County team that the Warriors should be a little bit better than, or a lot better than. This is a team in Tuscaloosa County that likely will be outmatched going into this game. It's just about, for Thompson, keeping your head on straight, not getting ahead of yourself with some big games looming on the schedule. But you look at what they've done so far this season. Expect Thompson to roll again. Don't be surprised if we're looking at 3 consecutive shutouts at the end of Friday night. Well, for the second consecutive year, the Oak Mountain Eagles sitting at 2-0 to kick off the season, and that's an impressive feat considering that under first-year head coach Tyler Crane, there's been some changes on the offensive side of the football, but they haven't faltered by any stretch of the imagination. This is a team in Oak Mountain that has started slow in both of their first 2 wins. Against Chelsea, they tied 13-13 at the half after going up 13-0. Last week against Pelham, the offense comes in, struggles yet again as they fall into a 0-0 halftime game against the Panthers. But look at what the defense did in both of those games. 13 points in the first half against Chelsea, 0 points last week against Pelham. And then in the second half, that's where the turn takes. The defense continues to play lights out, and that offense eventually wears down the opposing defenses as Oak Mountain has now outscored their first 2 opponents in the second half by a combined 54-6. Last week it was 21-0 against Pelham to come back and win that game 21-0 in shutout fashion. And the week before, obviously, a 46-19 victory against Chelsea as they now sit at 2-0 on the season. Now, they do get arguably their most difficult test to this point against a 7A opponent this week after back-to-back 6A tests. They take on Gadsden City, who sits at 2-0 as well and has been playing great defense themselves. They beat Etowah 34-0 to open the season, and then consistency-wise, 34 more points last week against Fort Payne as they win that one 34-10. So a defense that's given up 10 or less with a shutout in the first 2 games and scored 34 on the offensive side in each of the first 2 games. So you've got 2 defenses in this game that have posted at least 1 shutout and have given up less than 19 or less in both of their first 2 games. So expect a very good defensive show here between these 2 teams. Now, you look back to last year, both these teams sitting at 2-0 a season ago as well. Oak Mountain ended up winning that game 38-23, made some big plays late in that game to win, and that's going to be the key again this year. You look at what they've got running the football this year. It's a different style offense. They're more spread out. It's not as much of a straightforward option attack. They're doing more of a QB option, different kind of spread offense this year that Evan Smith can throw out of as well. But we've seen what they've done running the football, and it's been very, very physical. You look at Trey Vassell, you look at C.J. Branson, both are big physical backs, but they've also got some great speed to them as well. And then we all know what Evan Smith can do running the football at the quarterback position. It wears down defenses, and I think that's going to be the key again this week. Oak Mountain's played so well early in the season. In the second half, we know the defense is going to continue to play well. The winner of this game, in my opinion, is the team that's going to play better in the second half of what should be another close game to open the first two quarters. So expect Oak Mountain to have that upper hand simply because they've been in two games where we've seen what they can do in the second half of football games. Even if they're trailing going into the second half by a touchdown or two, wouldn't surprise me if they pull off a comeback just simply because of what we've seen early in the season. I do think this is going to be a tight contest, a tight battle. Oak Mountain hasn't really pulled away early in games, so that leads you to think that in the second half you're going to have a close one. But the Eagles have shown early in the second half they come out with a different attitude. If they start the game with that same attitude, watch out. This offense could put up a big night against Gadsden City. But the way these two defenses have played, I expect a close first half, and then Oak Mountain to try to create some separation there in the second half. The Spain Park Jaguars are going to have to fix some things in a hurry this Friday night, coming off a 42-8 loss against Briarwood. And it's a game in which they looked good for the entire first half, led 8-7 midway through that first half, and then ended up trailing 14-8. Now, a season earlier, they trailed 14-0, came back to win 21-0 or 21-14 against Briarwood with 21 unanswered in the second half. That had to be on the minds of the Lions players last Friday night as they came out and put that game away on the back of Christopher Vizina at quarterback, as well as Luke Rebels, the running back there at Briarwood, win that one 42-8. So that partly played a difference in that final score, but you look at what Spain Park was able to do early in the season in that first game and then in the first half against Briarwood, and then what they struggled with in the second half, and it starts with the defensive side of the football. That was the key coming into the season for this team, was to show improvement on the defensive side of the football. They showed it against Huntsville in that opening win. They gave up just 13.6 for the majority of the game, and then last week against Briarwood, for a while they held them to 7, and then just 14 at the half for the Lions. But in that second half, something opened up, and the defense for Spain Park just wasn't what it needed to be as they fall behind 42-14 or 42-8 in that opening loss. Or second game loss to Briarwood. Now they've got to fix it in a hurry because the next two games are arguably two of the toughest games that anybody can face in the entire state, possibly in the entire country, in a two-game stretch. They'll be taking on both top 5 teams in Hewitt-Trussville this Friday and Thompson next Friday, and those are two teams ranked nationally as well. So a big 2-week stretch for the Jaguars, and they're taking on a Hewitt-Trussville team this Friday night that's put up 42 and 41 points, or 49 and 41 points, in their first two games of the season, whereas Spain Park's coming off a game where the defense just gave up 42 to Briarwood. So the big key for this one for the Jags is to do a lot of what we saw early in game one against Huntsville. The defense, if they're going to struggle, you want to keep the offense on the field longer, keep Hewitt-Trussville's offense off the field, and the key to doing that is sustaining long drives and then capitalizing on those opportunities at the end of those long drives. A new style of offense, running more of an option attack this year. Evan Smallwood, a big key in their success at the quarterback position, showed some promise early last week, played well in week one. Then you've got Xavier Long and Zamir Ferris at the running back position, two athletic and fast guys as well. So the key is going to be, can those guys step up like they did in week one this week against Hewitt-Trussville? They're going to need to score points, and they're probably going to need to get to at least the 30s. Now, if they play their style of offense and they eat up a lot of clock, they can get to about 28 points and this still be a tight contest, but most likely going to have to get at least into the 30s to win this matchup, as successful as we've seen the offense be at Hewitt-Trussville so far this season. So it's going to be a tough week for the Jags, a tall task to pull off this win, but don't be surprised if this one is a tight contest. Spain Park played their best games last year against the toughest opponents, almost upset Hoover, almost upset Thompson, and now they've got a chance early in the season to make some noise, and there wouldn't be a better way to bounce back than to take down Hewitt-Trussville in the opening week of region play. It's an important 2-week stretch, even if you lose, for the Jags to gain some confidence and show that they can compete with two of the best teams in the region so that they can win some of the games that are more toss-up contests later on down the road. There may not be a better way to kick off region play than this fun 280 area rivalry between the Briarwood Lions and Chelsea Hornets. And you've got two teams entering on different ends of the spectrum, but don't be surprised if this one's closer than many expect this week. You've got a Briarwood team, obviously, that's played well through the first 2 weeks, sitting at 2-0. They beat Madison Academy 41-17, a top 5 team in the 4A classification. And then last week, a 42-8 win against 7A Spain Park, a team that was 2 classifications higher than the Lions 2 years ago. So for Briarwood to win that game in such dominating fashion last week is one of the things that makes you think this team may be for real in the 6A classification this week. Obviously, Christopher Vizina, the quarterback, and Luke Rebels, the running back, have been lights out. They've had close to 200 all-purpose yards in each game this season through the first 2, and they continue to play well week in, week out, while the defense has also been impressive, limiting Spain Park to 8 points last week, a difficult offense to prepare for there early in the season, not one that you face on a weekly basis. And then, obviously, what we saw against a very talented Madison Academy team in week 1 to give up just 17 points. So you look at what Briarwood's done well. Their offense is arguably the best it's been in several years, and the defense just as good as it always is. They're under head coach Matthew Forrester and previously under head coach Fred Yancey. So Briarwood playing extremely well as the number 4 team in the 6A classification. The Chelsea Hornets, on the other hand, they entered this game 0-2, but it's a team that's been so close, played 2 good halves so far this season. It's been a tale of 2 halves for this team. As you look at what they did in the opener, they played really well in that first half against Oak Mountain to open the season, a 13-13 tie at the half. They scored 13 unanswered going into the half after falling behind 13-0 early in that game. But then in that second half, they gave up 4 touchdowns in 6 plays in the third quarter for 33 unanswered to Oak Mountain, going to lose that game 46-19. Last week, it was the opposite. They fell behind 20-0 to Helena early in that game going into the halftime break. Then they scored 14 unanswered to start the second half, had a chance there to tie or take the lead. A very questionable pass interference call on Cooper Griffin that has created some buzz and talk around Chelsea so far this week was called, reverted back a touchdown opportunity, and the Hornets go on to lose that game 27-14 instead of having a late lead there against Helena. So you look at how close they've been, how frustrated they probably are with some different things. This is a team that is still talented. The defense is slowly coming along, other than a few plays against Oak Mountain. And then last week, a couple of first-half mistakes there against Helena. This is a team that's played really well overall on that side of the ball. Now, the offense started out really well in that opener. Hayden Garrison, 300-plus yards. Thomas Simpson, Cooper Griffin, both over 100 yards receiving there in the first game. And then last week, they just hit a brick wall. They couldn't move the ball as successfully, so you've got to make those adjustments this week. You can't let last week get you down. You got to find a way to build off of it and improve and find some different things there on the offensive side of the ball. And it's going to start with the offensive line playing well and the running game starting to produce some big plays so that people can respect some different things and dynamics there on the Chelsea offense. So that's arguably going to be the big thing. Can the offense move the ball again this week? Because the defense played well last week. They played well in the first half against Oak Mountain, and now it's all about scoring points, matching those two sides of the ball, and doing it for 4 quarters instead of 2 quarters. That's going to be the biggest key for the Chelsea Hornets going into this one, because this is a very talented Briarwood team that's expected to compete for a 6A state championship, and they do some good things well, especially running the football, which is also what they've struggled to stop when it comes to Chelsea the first 2 weeks of the season. So if they can find a way to stop the run and then turn what's been a successful one half the first 2 weeks into a successful complete game, you're going to see a tight game that goes down to the wire between these two teams. But at the end of the day, you've got to give Briarwood the edge simply because they have the talent that's been proven against good opponents early in the season with their 2-0 record. Chelsea, however, not going to be out of the woods even with the loss. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a strong second half of the season and battle for one of those playoff spots here in a very difficult region between these two teams. Look for them to both battle. A fun rivalry matchup between these two in the 280 area. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch it unfold as they look to kick off region play. On paper, this game's going to give us a lot of unknown between Helena and Wetumpka as they kick off region play this Friday night. It's the second of a two-game stretch last year that Helena lost by 6 points or less, losing a tough 4-point game to Chelsea, then losing a tough 6-point game the next week to Wetumpka. So you know that the Huskies want redemption. They want that 3-0 start that they were so close to last year, and they've got a good shot at it. This is a Helena team that's played extremely well in the first 2 weeks of the season on both sides of the ball. But you look at what they've done defensively, and I think that's arguably going to be the biggest key this week. Coming off 55-0 win against Dallas County to open the season, a 27-14 win against Chelsea last week, giving up an average of 7 points per game through these first couple of games of the season. So how does this defense play this week is going to be key, and they're taking on a Wetumpka team that has struggled offensively early in the season. They've scored 13 and 18 points in their first two games. You look at their wins so far, they lost their opener 41-13, and then they won last week 18-14. So a team that's not really putting up a ton of points offensively. That defense improved last week, looked really well. But so far you look at what Helena's done well. Mac Turner stepped up at the quarterback position big time through the first 2 weeks of the season, having a great start to the season. And then you look at receiver J.C. Sibley. He's been the go-to target coming off a 100-plus yard receiving game this past Friday night with a couple of touchdowns. That passing game's in fine-tune. It is in good shape right now. And you look at what this team normally likes to do, which is run the football and wear down defenses. They're still doing that decently well. Also did it extremely well in the opener last week. Didn't really have to do anything special in the run game other than churn some clock and wear down Chelsea there late in the game. And that's what's dangerous to me. There's still a lot of unknown about how far this offense's potential can go. And I think you're going to see it reach a new level this Friday night against Wetumpka. If that run game's playing extremely well, wears down Wetumpka's defense, and Mac Turner and J.C. Sibley are having success in the passing game, we know what Helena's got defensively. They're loaded on that side of the ball, and they've proved it early in the season, as they have the last several years as well. And now you look at what they've done early in the season on that side of the ball and what Wetumpka struggled with so far coming into this matchup. That gives Helena an upper hand going into the game. But this is one they lost last year in a tight battle. It's going to be another tight battle this season as well. That defense comes out and plays as well as it did the first 2 weeks. If Wetumpka continues to struggle a little bit on the offensive side, look for Helena to have their chances to win this football game late in the second half. Jordan Washington could be a big key at the running back position, and I don't have any lack of confidence that we could see Mac Turner make a big play in the passing game if need be there in the fourth quarter as well. So big opportunity for Helena to not only start 3-0 but 1-0 in region play as they go into a big stretch after that. They want the region championship this year after finishing first 2 years ago, runner-up last year with a few forfeits due to COVID-19. This year, they want to play every game, and they want to win every game, and they want that region title, and this would go a long way in helping them accomplish it. Well, it wasn't quite the start that the Shelby County Wildcats were hoping for last week as they fell 41-24 to the Montevallo Bulldogs in a rivalry battle to kick off the 2021 season. But that game was a lot closer than that final score indicated. Shelby County was in that contest for much of the night, going throughout the third quarter. And then Joseph Anderson, the Montevallo running back that's been tremendous so far through the first two games, just put together a couple of long touchdown runs that put it out of reach for the Wildcats late in that contest. That was the big difference in that one. And it was Montevallo's second game. Shelby County still trying to improve on some things after a jamboree loss the week before. They're still trying to get into shape for the season, and they showed some promising signs. The offense played well at times. They led in the first half, and the defense played well at times. It was just a couple of big plays late in the game for a team that was still trying to get its feet under it and learn the ropes under first-year head coach Zeb Ellison here early in the season. But now they go into region play. This is a team that's looking to get back to the playoffs for the second year in a row after really ending that drought last year of dating back to 2009. They've got that confidence that they can compete in their region now, and they're going to match up against Sipsey Valley. That should be an interesting one this Friday night. Sipsey Valley sits at 1-1 on the season so far through their first 2 games, fresh off a 30-24 win last week. And it's an improved team. Shelby County won this game last year, but Sipsey Valley set at 0-2 going into this game last year, and they lost those first 2 games by a combined score of 97-13. So you've got an improved Sipsey Valley team. You've got a Shelby County team that's 0-1 instead of 1-0 off that loss to Montevallo. So how will that play a factor into the mindset of the Wildcats going into this game? I still think they should be the more talented team, and I think you've got a coach in Zeb Ellison that's one of the best in the area of helping his team make adjustments and improvements on a week-to-week basis. So I do think the Wildcats are going to bounce back. I do think they should have a slight edge in this game, but this one's going to be a lot closer, I think, than what we saw last year, and it's a big one. This is one that could make a difference in one of these 2 teams going to the playoffs at the end of the season. That said, the 2 teams that Sipsey Valley's played so far this season, not quite up to the level of what Montevallo is in the 4A classification there for Shelby County last week. I think Shelby County holds a slight edge going into this matchup. We'll see if they can play that out on the field. As we just said, it's been a dominant start for the Montevallo Bulldogs in year 2 under head coach Blake Bourne, and it's kind of what we expected. They were so good at the end of last season in his first year with a lot of young talent, and now a lot of that talent's back, including Joseph Anderson, who's racked up 638 rushing yards in his first 2 games of the season. Last week, 330 yards with 5 touchdowns there for the Bulldogs, and that was a big reason why they won. He was able to reel off a couple of huge runs there in the fourth quarter to help seal that game and put the Bulldogs at 2-0 overall this season. Now they've won 9 of their last 10 games dating back to last year, and that lone loss in that span came to the eventual state champions in Class 4A in the second round of the playoffs last season. All that coming off an 0-4 start last season. So they're hitting a stretch now that's extremely key. This is a stretch that, to kick off region play against American Christian and Bibb County, arguably the toughest 2-game stretch to kick off region play across the entire state, especially in the 4A classification. American Christian, the defending region champion, always a state championship contender, but Montevallo may be getting them at the right time. If you look at this matchup on paper, the Patriots enter this game sitting at 1-1, lost their opener 28-27 to Parker, and then won 34-20 against Greensboro last week, while the Bulldogs, on the other hand, 2 wins against teams a classification higher. Obviously beat Shelby County last week 41-24, and we saw what they did in their opener 2 weeks ago as well to get off to a 2-0 start with that win against Marbury a couple weeks ago. So this is a Montevallo team that's extremely confident. They've got a running back in Joseph Anderson that's quickly proven to be one of the best in the state so far this season. So he's obviously going to be key in this game if Montevallo wants to have a chance to upset American Christian early in the season. But the bigger key is, who else do they have? We know a talented team like American Christian is going to be ready to hone in on what Anderson does at the running back position. And while Blake Bourne's going to find some different ways to get him the ball, who is that next option? Who's that next guy up that can make those big and explosive plays, especially if Kyle Cunningham remains out at the quarterback position for the 3rd week in a row after getting injured early in that first game of the season. He's obviously a talented athlete and can make a difference, and they've got a ton of athletes across the board, but if Anderson's not going to reel off 300 yards and 5 touchdowns, who's going to be that next guy that can make some big plays on the offensive side of the ball, and can the defense match up with what American Christian puts out there on the offensive side of the football? Now, I do think this is a year where American Christian may not be quite as talented as they've been in years past, but that doesn't mean they're not still extremely talented. This is a team that is looking to win another region championship, or probably the favorites to do so. That said, the way that they've started the season, Montevallo has arguably the best shot they've had in 5 years to win this game. After winning in 2016, they've lost the last 4 in a row, so a big chance to get this game, which, if they win this one, Montevallo instantly becomes a major threat to win the region championship this year. And I think they are well coached. They are a team that has shown they have athleticism and can make big plays late in games, both last year and early this year, to win football games Don't be surprised if Montevallo pulls off this win on Friday night. Don't be surprised if they compete for one of the top 2 spots in the region this year as well. So big, big opportunity ahead for the Bulldogs as they take on American Christian. Well, the Vincent Yellow Jackets now sitting at 2-0 on the season, a strong chance to get to 3-0 this Friday night. The Jackets last week, early in the week, found out that they picked up a forfeit win against Winterboro, a team that beat them 18-16 to open the season on Thursday night the week before. And that was a game which Vincent had their chances to win head-to-head. Gave up just 3 big plays defensively that went for touchdowns. Other than that, shut down Winterboro's offense. And then the offense of Vincent just missed some opportunities deep into Winterboro territory, and they couldn't convert on several opportunities, and they lose that game 18-16 before it's found out early the next week that an ineligible player was played by Winterboro, giving Vincent that win and a 1-0 record. And then this past Friday night, taking on Billingsley, they capitalized. There were no missed opportunities. Vincent went on to win 40-6 in that football game. They now sit at 2-0 on the season with a chance to move to 3-0. And this would complete the redemption path of last year where they had to forfeit those first 3 games due to COVID-19 and started 0-3 to the season before then bouncing back to win their first 2 head-to-head battles the next 2 weeks. So if they win this one and they're sitting at 3-0, 1-0 in region play with the opportunity of what's ahead in the next 2 weeks of region play as well, 2 games they won last year, you could be looking at a 5-0 team, and that's got to give you some confidence if you're Vincent. Not necessarily get your head ahead of yourself, but it's something that you can build off of and say, man, this is where we are now, and this is the opportunity we have. Let's go out and seize the moment. So a big chance this Friday night against Ranburne. This is a team that Vincent should be able to compete with if you look at what these 2 teams have done on paper. Ranburne sitting at 1-1 on the season, 28-26 win against White Plains, and a 21-14 loss to Wadley. So you look at what those 2 teams or 2 games have been like for them, very tight battles and lower scoring games. And what's been impressive for Vincent so far this season is what could give them the win this Friday night, and that's the defensive side of the football. You look at what Vincent's done so far this season. It's a team that's given up 18 points and 6 points in the first 2 games, and this is a Vincent team that the Jackets have given up 20 or less just 3 times combined in the last 3 seasons before this. So now they've done it in their first 2 games of this season, almost matched that total from the last 3 years combined. That defense is what can make a difference in this matchup as the Jackets look to get off to their first 3-0 start since 2001. And I know there's an asterisk next to that if they do win this because of that forfeit to start the season, but who knows if that game's different in the opener because of that. I credit that. I think that this would be an official 3-0 start in my mind, and they've got a strong chance to do it. The defense playing so well. Trey Youngblood, Jamari Lawson, Blake Allums at quarterback. This is a team that's got potential. If they continue to play as well as they are defensively, they're going to be in a lot of football games this year, and they will be in this football game with a chance to win and make some big plays late in this matchup. Keep your confidence high throughout. That defense can make some big plays and then find that confidence late for a big offensive play. You could be looking at a 3-0 Vincent team at the end of this Friday night. Before we get to our SCR Stars of the Week segment, we're going to run through our AISA and ACSC update. The Cornerstone Chargers this Friday night will be at Lakeside, coming off a 54-0 loss to Banks Academy last Friday night. You look so far at what Cornerstone has done. Obviously, the loss last week, a difficult one. The win the week before, however, a 20-0 shutout that against a team that they struggled with a year prior. So now they get a Lakeside team they lost to 42-0 a year ago. Another chance to show that they've taken a step and improved from what they were last year. I expect this one to be a little bit closer than the 42-0 game, but that's a lot of points to make up going into this matchup. Tough to see them winning, but you never know. They have made that drastic leap. They could put together a competitive effort. I expect them to at least have a chance going into the second half. Coosa Valley, they'll be at Crenshaw Christian this Friday night, and the Vince DiLorenzo era has kicked off. They did play last week. They lose 35-14 to Pickens Academy, but that game was extremely close considering what that final score was a year ago, much closer this time around. Coosa Valley had a chance there in the first half of that game, was tied 7-7 for a while, and had their chances going into the second half, just eventually ran out of steam, ultimately lose 35-14. Now they get the defending state champions in their region as they lost 67-0 in this game last year. But DiLorenzo's already shown that this team's taken a step forward from what they were last year. Expect Coosa Valley to at least get some points on the board and for that final score not to look as lopsided this season. For the Evangel Lightning, they enter this week fresh off their first loss of the season. They fall 48-28 last week to Grace Baptist, one of the top 8-man teams in the country. Now they'll be looking to bounce back as they take on Southern Christian this Friday night, and a great opportunity to do so. A Southern Christian team that's 0-2 with losses of 32-26 and 49-12 in their first two games. Expect Evangel to show what they do well and pound the football offensively in their run game, which has been impressive so far this season, and try to improve on some things in the passing game as well. I expect Evangel to roll and improve to 3-1. Now it's time for our SCR Stars of the Week, and we've got some more impressive performances to talk about from Week 2 of the high school football season. And we got to start with Joseph Anderson, arguably been the best player so far through the first two games of the season in the county, as he's racked up a combined 638 yards and 8 touchdowns through his first two games, all running the football. Last week, 33 carries, 330 yards, and 5 touchdowns there in that win against Shelby County. 2 big, long, late touchdown runs there to help the Bulldogs pull off that rivalry win. Now he looks for another big performance against American Christian, which is where he could really put his name in the running for one of the best players in the state if he's able to do that against one of the better teams in the state. Now in the 7A classification, Connor Harrell continuing to impress early in the season, not having to do a whole lot there as Thompson's just been blowing teams out 55-0 in their first two games. He's playing about a half of football, but last week 15-20, 270 yards and 6 touchdowns in that win. And he was joined by another stellar performance from Justin Pegues, the athlete there at Thompson that does a little bit of everything, as Pegues posted 6 receptions, 131 yards, and 2 touchdowns there for the Warriors in that big 55-0 win against Sparkman. So a good 2-0 start there for the Thompson Warriors. Now the Oak Mountain Eagles, and it's been all about the defense the first couple of weeks. Obviously, we've seen what Evan Smith, C.J. Branson, and Trey Vassell have been able to do on the offensive side of the football. Vassell, 2 touchdowns and about 76 yards last Friday night. Had a good, solid offensive performance. But you look at the defense, Zach Smith, 9.5 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks there in that game last Friday as the defense posts a shutout. And he was joined by Garrett Murphy, 5 tackles, 1.5 for loss, and almost had a pick 6 there with his 1 interception, getting down to about 10 yards behind me here at the 1-yard line here deep in Pelham territory. That sealed that game late on Friday night. So a big showing from both Zach Smith and Garrett Murphy there for the Oak Mountain Eagles. Now for the Briarwood Lions, we know the 2 names, Christopher Vizina, Luke Rebels. They've continued to impress early in the season. This past Friday night, both did it with their legs. Vizina, 12 carries, 131 yards, and 3 touchdowns from the quarterback position. Also 6 of 9 passing for 70 yards and throwing the football as well. Rebels, 19 carries, close to 200 yards running the football. He had 190 there with 3 touchdowns. Also added 3 receptions for 32 yards in the passing game. For the Helena Huskies, Mac Turner off to a very strong start at the quarterback position for the Huskies. He went 20 of 29 for 213 yards and 3 touchdowns. One of his best performances there for Helena in his 2 years as a starter. And he's got the Huskies rolling on the offensive side of the ball. And one reason why, J.C. Sivley, his favorite target, 11 receptions, 131 yards, and 2 touchdowns there for Helena's offense in that big 27-14 win against Chelsea. If that continues to roll and their running game continues to improve, it's going to be a tough offense at Helena to stop. But they've also got some great defense, and that's kind of been the spotlight so far this season. Connor Pugh, 7.5 tackles, 5 tackles for loss there for the Huskies in that win against Chelsea. Joel Logan not too far behind, 6 tackles and 2 tackles for loss there for Helena in that win against the Hornets. Strong playing from Helena's defense so far this season. We close it out with the Vincent Yellow Jackets. 2 players to be mentioned in their 40-6 win against Billingsley. Look at Jamari Lawson, 158 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown as well. So a strong performance as he had 3 total touchdowns, close to 200 all-purpose yards there in that win for the Yellow Jackets. And Trey Youngblood did just about everything on the offensive side of the football. 84 receiving yards for 2 touchdowns, threw for an additional touchdown, and ran for an 11-yard touchdown. He was all over the field and also caught a 2-point conversion as well, as Vincent wins that one 40-6. Those 2 guys continue to play that way. This team's going to have a very successful run throughout the rest of the season. So a strong list of candidates there, a strong list of SCR Stars of the week this week, and now expect them to step up. Now's the stretch where they need to step up as we hit region play and look for some of the biggest performances of the season to help a lot of our teams chase down playoff spots this season. Well, that's going to do it from here at Pelham High School as we get you geared up for another exciting week of high school football action here across Shelby County. Some big games this Friday night to kick off region play. As we said at the top of the show, we've got 6 total teams sitting at 2-0 right now overall this season. So great chances to not only get to 3-0 this Friday night, but also 1-0 in region play as they look to chase down some big playoff spots this season. So a big night of action. We'll have it all covered for you. Follow along on Twitter at Alec Etheridge SC. We'll give you updates live from all the games, and then we'll have the stories and photos after as well. And as always, we'll be here for you, our live pregame show on Facebook. I hopefully will not be as dehydrated as I was last week, and we'll have a little bit more energy for that this Friday night, as we should have a little bit better weather, but going to be an awesome week to kick off region play. I expect us to have several playoff teams, and I think you're going to see several of them start off 1-0 in region play, continue what's already been an impressive season for us so far this season. But that's going to do it from here at Pelham High School. We'll see you all this Friday night from another action-packed week of high school football.